Hello, 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 everyone. Haven't listened in yet. It started very soon, in like 5 seconds. So, yeah, definitely sign in if you can. Otherwise, we'll just get to it at the end of the presentation. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. And if you guys ever get hungry in between the presentation, don't be don't be ashamed. Just come up and grab some. So, yeah. All right. So my name is Matthew de Guzman, and I am one of the ColorStack directors, the technical directors, and I will be giving a workshop today on March 12th, 2025. Let the records show that it is that day today. And I'm going to be talking about Bluesky as well as the app protocol. And again, there's the QR code. So yeah, if you haven't gotten that, don't worry, we're going to get to that at the end of the presentation as well. So yeah, so agenda for today. Right, we're going to be talking about Bluesky and then the app protocol, obviously. And then go into a little demo application, which is built on the app protocol. So yeah, nothing super long. This is going to be a little bit of a quicker workshop today, but I think that there's going to be a lot of insight taken away with this. And what I want is for you guys to be able to walk out of that room and feel inspired. I want you to walk out and feel like Mark Zuckerberg in a sense, although even better, right? I want you guys to have the next $1 billion unicorn in your head. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even next year, but I hope that this inspires you. All right. And I want to hear about your stories. Yes, I will accept thanks in the form of equity. So, yeah. Cool. So, section one, Bluesky, right? What is Bluesky? Some of us have heard of it, some of us haven't. In short, it is a microblogging social media service where users can share text, images, and videos. If you don't know what that means, it's basically just Twitter, but it's not Twitter. And this is what it looks like. Again, it looks just like Twitter. Don't worry, guys, it's not Twitter. But yeah, here's a little timeline of how Bluesky actually got started. So if you wonder why it looks just like Twitter, it's because it actually started at Twitter. It was a research initiative started back in 2019. And then a couple of years later into the development of it, they became independent. So they still had good ties with Twitter, but they just wanted to pursue it a little bit more aggressively. So they became their own LLC. But then in 2022, Elon Musk ended up acquiring Twitter. And we all know the massacre that happened then. And so not surprising that he severed ties with Bluesky. I don't think decentralization is something Elon Musk was really interested in anyway. So that happened. And the following year, Bluesky first launches invite only. And then actually in 2024 is when they first released to the public and removed the invite only wall. And since then, they've amassed millions and millions of users. And they've become quite popular, right? So yeah, that was quick, right? Not much else to say about that. I guess I want to talk about the app protocol first, or I guess after Bluesky. And this is really how we're going to see what differentiates Bluesky from Twitter, other than the fact that it has no ads, which is super cool. But yeah, right. I mentioned the app protocol. What is it? Why did we make it? How does it work? But before we get into that, I want to leave you guys with another quote, right? I love quotes. I know you guys love quotes too. The greatest threat to democracy is the concentration of power in too few hands. This was by philosopher Alexis. I'll let you guys pronounce that last name. But yeah, this is kind of emphasizing the decentralization. I don't think this guy's from like the 1800s, so he probably didn't have decentralized protocols in mind. But I mean, same thing, right? When you have some sort of government where only one guy is ruling everything, that's a little dangerous. And the same concept might come into hand when you have a company that's controlling all of your data. And who knows, maybe they might start censoring everything and you might be fed a bunch of things that maybe aren't necessarily true, but you don't know because now they're controlling everything. So now I just want to ask you guys a question. I want to get you engaged in this conversation. Um, why is decentralization important? Right? Anybody have? If you guys get an answer right, you can take some food or a Capri Sun. Um, yes, this way. Power to the people, right? It's good to have some power in our hands, right? Especially sometimes I'm on TikTok and I just end up doom scrolling, right? Then I feel like I have no power. Um, so some power needs to be restored back to me. Um, anyone else? Poopy, you look like you've got something to say. All right. Well, if you do, feel free to raise your hand and say, "Ooh, I know exactly why decentralization is important." But yeah, I want you guys to also walk out of the store and start thinking about how can you decentralize your lives, or why is it important? Really think on this. So now we can get into what the AT protocol actually is, right? So AT stands for authenticated transfer, and it's pronounced at, sort of like the at symbol and the handle. It was like a play on words, very creative. And what the at protocol is, it's an open, decentralized network for building social applications. So open as an open source, all of the libraries that are used with, or that this guy is using with the at protocol, um, is all open sourced on GitHub, and you guys can all access that and make your own contributions. And then it is a decentralized network because although Bluesky started and a lot of the components, that's not stopping any one of us from creating any of those components ourselves and putting that onto the network. So anyone can have any of the components in the network. And I'm just kind of saying this abstractly right now because I'll go into what the components of the decentralized network are later. And then, yeah, for building social applications. So, of course, Bluesky is an example of a social application. But maybe you want to build a social application, right? Maybe you really like fruit and you just want to have a social media dedicated to fruit. Maybe people post pictures of the fruit that they've eaten and they can rank it out of 10. You can do that with the app protocol. Um, so yeah, some food for thought, no pun intended. And, and now that we've sort of talked about the app protocol for a bit, let's go a little bit more into the weeds, right? So there are several components here. Can be a little at first, but the first one that I want to talk about is actually over here. Can you see my mouse? Yeah. So where it says PDS, all the way on the left. Yeah. So PDS, right? What does that stand for? It stands for Personal Data Server. And this is where all of the data is stored that gets used in the application, right? So think about Instagram, right? Maybe you post a picture on Instagram. Where would that get stored? Well, in the case of the app protocol, it would get stored on a PDS. If you sign up with one of Bluesky's PDSs, then you're signing up on one of the servers that they have. But like we said, this is an open, decentralized social media network. So you can host your own PDS, right? And it's not very difficult. You don't need to have a very powerful machine. You can do that on a Raspberry Pi. So if any of you guys have some self-hosted servers, you can set up a PDS, and yeah, now you're in control of the data, and you don't have to worry about some company leaking your data because now you're in control of it. So yeah, that's where all the data is stored. But now you might be wondering, okay, I have the data. How does any of this get propagated to the actual application? And the way that that works is with this thing called a relay. Now, relays, you can sort of think of them as web crawlers, right? This basically just claims all of the PDSs and then provides them to something else. We'll talk about what that something else is later, but essentially this just aggregates all of the data from the personal data servers. So if you had one set up and if Bluesky has one set up, then it will be discoverable via the relay, right? So now we have the data servers that hold the data, the relays that aggregate all of the data that you hold. And now we can talk about something called a fire hose. And a fire hose is essentially a service that one of your applications can subscribe to, which just feed all of the retrieved data from the relay to your application. Um, and with the fire hose, there are some other components within here, right? So feed generators and labelers. That's a big part of the app protocol, specifically the feed generator portion, right? And that's what I think is super cool about the app protocol is that you can cater your feed towards you, right? If you go on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok, right, that's just an algorithm that's just learning what you like. Maybe it's doing some crazy data stuff, um, and they're just poaching from all of your applications, right? But in this case, again, we're giving all the power to the user so they can decide what they want to see, right? So maybe you want to see LeBron James only. You can do that. Or maybe you want to see watermelon on your feed. You can do that, right? And you can do that by setting up a feed generator. So you can set up your own algorithm. It can be super simple, right? As simple as like does this post contain the word watermelon in it? Or you can make it as complex as you'd like, set up your own like machine learning tools and whatnot to have your own algorithm and go crazy with it. And then the labelers essentially just label the content and help your feed generator and other sort of app views decipher what to show and what not to show. Maybe you might label something as like NSFW, or you might label it as basketball. You can label it as anything, and then your application can decide what to do from there. And then we have these things called app views. And the app views are essentially the completed applications, right? So Bluesky, in this case, would be an app view, or maybe your Fruit application that we talked about earlier, also an app view. And yeah, from there, right, whenever you want to write any sort of information, right, so maybe you're posting to this application, now you're going to directly talk to the PDS. So that's just going to write to the personal data server. And then this whole loop will start over again. So those are the components of the app protocol in a nutshell. As you can see, if you were to set up your own application with this, the nice thing about decentralization is that you don't really need that much of a database, right? Because everybody else kind of has their own. Or maybe someone like Bluesky has their own services that you can use. You still do need to have some sort of database, kind of temporarily though. Nothing too crazy. But yeah, it's really easy to just get started. And it makes it kind of nice. Cool. So that was our short little dive into the app protocol. Now I want to show you guys what you can actually do with this, right? So there's a little website that I set up earlier today. I think it's just called statosphere.deguzman.cloud. And if you guys have a Bluesky application or just any sort of app protocol or like accounts, then you can definitely do this, right? So Statosphere, basically you log in and you set your status and then whoops, and then everyone can see what you're feeling, right? So this is my Bluesky handle, and this is my friend's Bluesky handle. I just kind of sent it to him to make sure that it was working. But yeah, whenever you say how you're feeling today, it just gets posted to this wall and everyone can see it. So yeah, let's go ahead and check that out, right? What is my handle? It's this pen, sir. I thought it sounded cooler when I made it. It's French for to think, because I was thinking. So, but it just doesn't look as cool as I thought. But yeah. Oh, whoops, that's not my handle. Dot Bluesky. Dot app. Cool. And then it's gonna, okay, I also don't think that's my handle. Is it bluesky.social? Okay. Yeah, I have bad memory, guys. Sorry. Thank you, Alex. All right. And now it's gonna show me. Oh no. Ah, okay. Yeah. Don't worry about that. I know exactly what happened. I changed the URL like 5 minutes ago. Um, but when it was working, it was super cool. Trust me, guys. Um, yeah. And I guess I can also just talk about how this is actually happening, right? So when you log in, right, this is going to communicate to whatever PDS you're using, right? And so in this case, we're using Bluesky. So it's going to use some OAuth. And essentially what's going to happen is it's going to ask your PDS, hey, can I get the necessary permissions once you've authenticated yourself with the username and password to read and write from this user's personal data server, right? And once that's all been done, you are now logged in. And once you're logged in, right, you can just press any one of these statuses. And when you press one of these statuses, now that we've gained the necessary permissions to read and write from your personal data server, we're going to do a write operation. And this write operation is going to add something called a record. And the record is just going to say something along the lines of, I am feeling maybe brainy today. And that's going to be added to your personal data server. And once that is added, our application will see that there's been something related to our application added to your personal data server. And it's going to show that via the UI, right? And again, how do we see that something's been added to the personal data server? We've got something called a fire hose hooked up to one of the relays, and the relay will see that you've changed your personal data server. So very simple app, right? You can sort of imagine how maybe this can get a little bit more complex, right? Maybe you can add reactions to the reactions, or maybe it doesn't have to be a reaction. Maybe it can be text, right? And maybe, shoot, why even stop at text? Maybe let's just start doing images and videos. And, maybe let's not have too much text. Maybe let's limit the text to like 250 characters. And then at that point, you basically have Twitter. So yeah, you guys can go crazy with this. I didn't actually write this code. This is actually, if you go to the app protocol, their SDK has a very nice quick start. And I was actually kind of gonna do something with it, but I was like, damn, this is actually like a lot of code. So I didn't do anything with it, but let me see. I am using it for my senior project. Yes. Okay, there you go. Quick start. Yeah. So yeah, you see this looks very familiar, and you can check out the GitHub right here. Right. So they have it set up via some sort of Express application. I was going to try and port that over to Svelte, but like I kind of maybe procrastinated a little bit, so I didn't have too much time to do that. And so I said, okay, I'll just set this up on mine. But yeah, this is kind of it. I guess I can also talk about how we're using it for my senior project, right? Just to kill some time. And I have it, not my resume, but over here. So yeah, let me tell you guys what I'm doing. So while this is being fetched, all right, this is like another second presentation, like part 2. I don't know why the resolution is so bad. Okay, there you go. Okay, right. This is my name, and this is my co-founder's name, right? Oh, whoa. Okay, right. What is Boshi? Oh, okay. I have to kind of remember the presentation, right? So Boshi is an anonymous university exclusive social media, kind of like Yik Yak, except we know no bounds. This is not proximity based. This is across all universities. So imagine you sign up with the University of Florida and you have some anonymous alias. And maybe someone else at the University of Central Florida signs up with some anonymous alias. You guys can start posting whatever you want. Not whatever you want. There are some restrictions. But you'll show up anonymously and people at the University of Florida and those who have signed up with their university emails across others can see what you're posting. So we we aim to harness this sort of atmosphere of just saying what you want and what you can without the burden of personal identity attached to it, right? And so this is built on the app protocol. We know what that is. You don't have to go over that right now. And well, this image looks familiar, right? So yeah, so there's the PDSs, the relays, and all that good stuff, right? And now we can get into the software architecture, which is maybe a bit more what we're interested in. Um, Let me see. Can I open this in another one? I don't think I can. Okay, I'm just going to zoom in a lot. All right. So, right, this is, I don't know. I don't think I want to get too much into the system design, but anyway, right. I'm just going to go over the familiar app protocol components of this. So, first thing is the fire hose, right? The fire hose is going to aggregate all of the Booksheet related content that it picks up from the relay, and it's going to feed it to this microservice called the Explorer. And then the Explorer is essentially just going to transform all the data received from the app protocol and place it into our Postgres database. And the reason we want it to be in our Postgres database is because this data is kind of relational, and we want all the data to be related to each other so that we can easily retrieve it. And note that although we are putting it in a Postgres database, typically there's like a time to live for these kinds of records so that, again, there's not a reliance on one single component or not one single person has control over all of this, since that is what the app protocol is sort of about. And then we have another microservice here called Tourbillon. If you're curious about these naming conventions, Explorer comes from the Rolex Explorer, and Tourbillon is just a very fancy watch movement, which makes the watches more stable in terms of telling time. But we can get into that later. Essentially, what Tourbillon does is it grabs all of the data aggregated from Explorer that was placed into Postgres and generates the feed for the actual user. So yeah, that's kind of how we do it. And then we have our OAuth flow here, where essentially we log the user in to the application and we get the necessary permissions to read and write to their personal data server, right? So whenever they make a post, we are going to use the session gathered from their OAuth, and we're going to write directly to their personal data server. And then again, that's going to be picked up eventually by our Firehose, and then the Explorer, back to the database, back from Tourbillon, and then back to the user's application. So yeah, a little bit of work that needs to be done from the time the actual person posts and then how it gets back. But, nothing super crazy. I think it's all relatively simple once you kind of understand the components. And this is kind of like the general outline of how these applications are typically built. And that's kind of how the app protocol also recommends it if you go to their SDKs and watch all of that good stuff. But yeah, that's kind of all I had planned for today, guys. I said it was a little bit of a short one. I know we all are a bit tired and we all want to just go home or go on vacation. So I didn't want to bore you too much. But yeah, no, we've talked for the past, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes. Does anyone have any questions for me? Yes. The SDK is available in two languages, one in TypeScript and the other in Golang. And they also do have one in Flutter that is community led. So if you're familiar with Flutter, then and you don't want to use React Native, you can use that. And that's actually what me and my partner are using for our senior project. We didn't really want to use React Native. We wanted to learn something new, so we've decided to use that. But yeah, unfortunately, there aren't many languages because it's still a pretty new service. Like I wanted to use Rust for the back end, which is why this workshop was actually going to be a Rust workshop. But then we realized that there was no Rust SDK. So I was like, damn, I'm just never going to use Rust. So I switched it to this. Yeah. All right. Well, if no one has any questions, maybe you're a little bit shy. You guys can come up afterwards. We can have a little bit of a one-on-one chat. But that concludes the workshop. Thank you all so much for coming. This is actually my last workshop ever. I'm a senior. Yeah. Not unless Maya wants to give me 50 more bucks and but yeah, I mean this is all we had planned for the semester, so to you all, thank you very much. I've appreciated all of you. Thank you. Oh yeah. The Guzman out. All right.